This guy doesn't follow those protocols. He's not Mubarak. He kills. To quote Dirty Harry when they asked him why this mass murder and Dirty Harry killed, he said, because he likes it. Gaddafi, when I was in there, I gave a lecture there in 2006 to various university groups on the mosaics. But it's the most frightening country I've ever been to in my life. They have mostly sub-Saharan African mercenaries that look like they're willing to kill you if you look at them twice. He likes to kill people. That's why he's been there for 41 years. He doesn't leave. When Obama says, when Mubarak was out the door, Obama said, leave. When Ben Ali was out the door, he said, leave. When Gaddafi was ready to kill and kill and kill to stay, Obama said, leave. Well, that's like Churchill in 1940 saying, Hitler, it's time to go. Hitler doesn't go unless you force Hitler to go. So basically, Gaddafi said to me, I don't want to leave. I like it. I like killing people. I like oil. I like bribing Europeans. I like my son going to the London School of Economics and paying £1.6 million and buying a doctorate from that prestigious university. I like the Monitor Group based in Harvard, Massachusetts. I like paying academics $250,000 to sing my praises. I like my son Saif having an art exhibit in London. You guys I like the Lockerbie Farmer. I bought him back for a little oil concession to the Italians and the French. So I'm not going to leave. And there we had it. Suddenly he didn't want to leave, and he started killing people, and we started to learn a number of things about this missing mission. Usually when you go on somebody, you have a mission. You may not like the mission, but we had a mission in Iraq. You may not like the methodology, but the methodology was messy, and you have an outcome. Okay, we didn't have a mission. What was the mission? Well, the mission was defined by the UN and the Arab League, nobody elected in the Arab League, only half of the countries that make up the UN have been elected, the only people who are elected are the US Congress with no input whatsoever. I can think that usually what happens, a US president, when he envisions military action, he does one of two things. Either goes to the Congress, and he goes to the UN. George Bush did that in Afghanistan. Got both approval. He tried to do it in Iraq. He only got the congressional approval in 2002 on October 11th. He did not get UN. Or he says, screw it, I'm going to go to either one. Bill Clinton, I'm going to get rid of Milosevic. I'm not going to go to the UN. I'm not going to go to the UN because the Russians will veto it. I'm not going to go to the US Congress because crazy Tom DeLay will use it again and won't vote me authorization. So he didn't do anything. He just started bombing. But we never had a president. Some of you may say Harry Truman, but we never really had a modern president that went to the UN and didn't go to the US Congress. It's a first. And so that's what he did. And then he got an authorization. Now the problem with the authorization said two things: use force for humanitarian purposes and have a no-fly zone. Okay, what's the mission? Is the mission to help the rebels? If you're going to help the rebels, the only one thing you can do is get rid of Gaddafi. But if that's not part of the mission, then what do? You have a no-fly zone? That's not going to do anything. He can kill people all day long and all night long without one airplane. So immediately we said, we are following the UN and the Arab League Accords to have a no-fly zone, and we're going to launch almost 200 missiles tonight. And they're not going to be no-fly zone, they're going to kill people on the ground. And then we're going to start hitting ground targets. Well, immediately the Russians and other people said, well, wait a minute, that's not what the UN said. If you want to uphold the UN, then you'd have to not do that. And somebody went to Obama and he said, well, he's got to go. Was regime change the mission? No, regime change is not the mission, it's humanitarian. So then there was a methodology. So we did this for 9 to 10 days, and finally Obama said, I'm kind of bored with this, so we'll be multilateral now. Reminded me when I gave a lecture not long ago in Versailles during the 2008 campaign. I talked to a French admiral. There are such people. Wonderful. And he said to me, in the middle of the conversation where everybody was singing the praises of Obama, he said, oh, you can't elect Obama. We're Obama. There's not room for two Obama. What he was saying was he had enough vision and imagination to see what we're talking about. The usual protocol is for the United States to lead, and then Europe to criticize us publicly, then privately say, thank God. Well, this time Obama, being a postmodernist, didn't do anything. He outsourced it to the 12 tornadoes. and they ran out of J. Downs, and they ran out of Tom, and now they don't know what to do. So we have a country of 6 million people plus that is resisting the combined power of the United States, France, and Britain, and Italy. I mean, these used to be formidable powers. They used to tear the world up in World War II. Now, 6.5 million people have defied them. A country that's in the middle of a civil war. Not even 3 million, if that. So we don't have a mission. We don't know whether we want Gaddafi gone or whether we want to help the rebels, or neither, or both. We don't have a methodology. To this day, nobody in this audience knows whether the methodology is to enforce a no-fly zone and to uphold UN sanctions, or to violate the UN sanctions that we brag by hitting ground targets, or to kill Gaddafi. Obviously, if we went to kill bin Laden, and perhaps his son, but we've already killed Gaddafi's son. I thought we weren't supposed to engage in targeted assassinations, but we did. Are we going to kill Gaddafi, or going to have Blackhawks come in and kill? I don't know. And the outcome, what do we want? Do we want the rebels? Are they going to be democratic? Are they going to be constitutional? From what we've seen in Egypt so far, it's something to worry about. So here we are in a postmodern situation in Libya. But if Barack Obama is a postmodern diplomat of confusion, mixed direction, obfuscation, he's an artist in that genre, then Libya was his greatest masterpiece. It really was. And if we look at the middle, but Libya, unfortunately, is part of it. He has a repertoire, and that's the entire Middle East. It's up and up for. Let's say that you want to make sense of it. What's U.S. policy toward Iran? What's U.S. policy toward Syria vis-a-vis Libya? How does Libya compare to what we did in Egypt? What's our policy toward the Saudis going into Iran? Are we worried about Hamas and the PA and Israel? What's the situation? I can't figure it out, but I do know that if I was a Martian, proverbial Martian, and flew in and I looked at this since January, I would come up with 4 or 5 conclusions. I think you all share them, but let's review them. Number 1, to the extent that you're democratic, this administration does not like you. Why do I say that? We have 2 democracies in the region. Israel, from day one, there was pressure put on Israel. Settlements, Netanyahu sort of snubbed in the White House, constant praise of the Palestinian Authority. And there was one other democracy, still alive, it's a constitutional government, Iraq. Obama has given 20 speeches that referenced Iraq, and not one did he ever praise the conditions that led to that constitutional government. I conclude, therefore, that Iraq was a bad mistake, and he doesn't like that government, and Israel was an aberration, he doesn't like that government, and they're the only 2 democracies in the region. That's the first thing I can come away with from this postmodern policy. The second, to the degree that you're totalitarian and anti-American, that means you have absolute control of society. You use unlimited force to put down dissidents, and you forbid the international press to come in, and you're virulently anti-American, then you're going to be favored by this administration. We have 2 examples, Iran and Syria. 2009, in May and June, we had 1 million people in the streets of Tehran. Obama said 2 things. I don't want to meddle in the internal affairs of Iran, and we should apologize for something we did 60 years ago with Mossadegh in 1953. He didn't know anything about Mossadegh, it's a very complex issue, but he was quite willing to apologize, and that was put down. In the case of Syria, which is using just as much or more violence than Libya, Secretary Clinton called Assad a reformer, and Obama could not wait until he got into office to restore full diplomatic relations, and then to this day has not cut off relations with Syria. That's the second thing I conclude. If you're totalitarian and anti-American, you're favored. If you're authoritarian and pro-American, that is, you're an SOB and you're mean and savage, but you're not an SOB like Iran and Syria, that is, you're Ben Ali in Tunisia or Mubarak in Egypt, then we don't like you. We don't like you because you're not totalitarian, you don't use enough violence, you don't control society, and unfortunately, you like us. The 4th thing I would conclude, I would not give up nuclear weapons. I would get a nuclear weapons program. Libya had a nuclear weapons program we know that was more advanced than Saddam, and it gave it up. Gaddafi did, as you know, in 2003 and 2004. Apparently, he told the Italian Prime Minister to avoid the fate of Saddam, and look what happened. Iran has a nuclear weapons program. That's the third or fourth message that I would have. So if you're Democratic, watch out. If you're pro-American, watch out. If you're anti-American, good. If you got a nuclear weapon, better yet. And oil. Oil. If you got oil, it's really good. Egypt didn't have any oil. Tunisia didn't have any oil. Israel, until recently, doesn't have any oil. The Gulf has oil. So if you're an authoritarian country like Saudi Arabia, you want to invade Iraq, suddenly we don't really care what you do. If you do care what you do, you'll cut back production. If Libya is a question, then we're going to be in Libya, or at least the Europeans are going to be in Libya. And Iran has oil. So it seems to me that nuclear weapons, oil, and the extent to which your totalitarian and anti-American governs this policy, all of this raises certain issues. Where does all this idea come from? I'd like to return to the speech he gave almost 3 weeks ago, tomorrow night on the deficit. Do you remember that speech? He addressed it. It was very confrontational. And he was told not to do it because, as you know, every time he talks about civility, and his polls go up, and every time he reverts back to his natural community organizing frame of mind, his polls go down. So he gave this speech, and as he just said, you have a $1.6 trillion deficit, $3.5 to $6 trillion budget. And he's upset now suddenly about the deficit. So this is unsustainable. And you think, yeah, you did it. This is the first time he said it. And you start to see through the speech that he didn't think he'd ever have to give that speech because everything was good about the deficit. He could borrow money to hire 200,000 employees. The higher the deficit, it's the opposite of starve the beast, it's scorch the beast. The higher the deficit, at some point, the higher the taxation. Higher the taxation, the greater the deficit, greater inflation. Inflation erodes capital, gives the guy without capital some sort of equity. So there was nothing wrong with deficits until somebody said it was unsustainable. Then he gave a speech and said it's unsustainable, even though that I was the greatest deficit spender in the history of the Republic, and if I'm re-elected in 8 years, I will double the aggregate debt of $14 trillion, $11 trillion, it'll be 24. And then he said, we got to do something about it. And I thought, yeah, you appointed a commission. You didn't reference the commission. Simpson Bowles, they gave you recommendations, you just ignored it. And then he said, we've got to raise taxes on those that make over $200,000. I thought, well, wait a minute, in December you just said you weren't going to do that. You got slacked by the Tea Party, you had this little conference, your polls went up, you reached out and you said, I'm not going to raise taxes in times of economic uncertainty. Now he said it is. What's going on? And then he mentioned health care. I thought, wow, you gave 1,000 exemptions from health care. I wish you gave the entire state of Maine. Why don't you just give each state an exemption? So finally he said, and I thought, I was yelling at the television. I thought, this is crazy, it's postmodern. Then he said with a straight face, we don't want to demagogue this issue. I thought, well, wait a minute. When you were a senator in 2006, and the deficit was 1/5 the size of it, you said it was unsustainable, and you voted to shut down the government. So what is going on? It's crazy. This foreign policy, this domestic policy, it's baffling. This killing of Osama bin Laden with every protocol that you said was not only illegal but immoral. It doesn't make sense. So let me just finish by going back to all I can come up with was the election of 2008. I thought that there was a rule in American politics that us, the voters, did not ever vote for a northern liberal democratic president.